You're sitting in a waiting room. The chairs are uncomfortable. You've already checked your phone 3 times in the last 2 minutes and nothing has changed. You shift in your seat, you look at the ceiling. A slow, creeping, almost painful sensation settles over you. Not hunger, not fear, not sadness. Something harder to name. That is boredom. And here's the strange part. No other animal on this planet truly experiences what you just felt. A dog left alone in a house will pace, chew furniture, scratch at the door. But that isn't boredom. That's anxiety. That's frustration. That's a drive to act without a clear target. A crow locked in a cage will solve puzzles, rearrange objects, seek out stimulation. Elephants, dolphins, chimpanzees, all of them show signs of what researchers carefully call behavioral boredom, a kind of blank restlessness. But researchers who study animal cognition draw a firm line between restlessness and genuine boredom. True boredom requires something that no other creature appears to possess, a mind that can step outside the present moment, evaluate its own experience, and declare it insufficient. You can do that. You are doing it right now just reading this, and the fact that you can is one of the most revealing things about what it actually means to be human.
Psychologist John Eastwood at York University has spent years studying boredom. He defines it as the aversive experience of wanting but being unable to engage in satisfying activity. Read that carefully. It isn't just the absence of stimulation, it's a gap, a distance between what your mind expects from the world and what the world is currently delivering. That gap requires self-awareness. It requires you to simultaneously live inside a moment and stand outside it, judging it. That is an astonishing cognitive feat, and most animals simply cannot perform it. Think about what boredom actually demands from a brain. First, you need the ability to monitor your own mental states, to notice what you are thinking and feeling, to evaluate your inner experience from the outside. Psychologists call this metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. Second, you need a concept of time, a sense that the present moment is slow, a sense that the future is out there somewhere, and that you would rather already be there. Third, you need imagination, the ability to vividly picture alternative experiences you could be having right now, but aren't. Confident, no creature on Earth combines all three of these in the way your brain does. That precise combination, metacognition, time perception, imagination, is what transforms simple restlessness into the specific, maddening, and deeply human experience of being bored.
Where did this come from? Why would evolution produce a mind capable of suffering in a situation that isn't actually dangerous? The answer takes you back roughly 2 million years. Your ancestors, Homo erectus, were already different from every other ape in one critical way. They had begun to plan ahead, not just minutes ahead, days, weeks, seasons. They anticipated the migration patterns of prey animals. They mapped water sources across seasons and remembered where to find them. They stored knowledge that would have no use until a later moment that had not yet arrived. To do any of this, their brains needed to model the future. In the moment you can model the future, you automatically create a comparison. What is happening now versus what could happen later? What is here versus what could be somewhere else? That gap, that comparison, is the cognitive seed of boredom. And once it was planted in the architecture of the human mind, it could never be removed. Neuroscientist James Danckert at the University of Waterloo has spent years arguing that boredom is not a malfunction. It is a signal. Like pain, it alerts you that something needs to change. Pain says your body is being damaged. Boredom says your mind is being wasted. It is your brain scanning the current environment, concluding that nothing here is worth your full cognitive investment, and demanding that you go find something that is. In the ancient world, that signal kept your ancestors moving. It kept them exploring. It kept them creating. A bored early human didn't sit still. They went looking for better hunting grounds, new plant sources, new tools, new solutions to old problems. The ones who felt no boredom, the ones who could exist in comfortable blankness without discomfort, had no internal drive to explore. They stayed where they were. They fell behind. You are descended entirely from the ones who could not stand doing nothing.
But here is where it gets strange. If boredom evolved as a motivational signal, a prod that says go, search, create, then why does it so often feel like the opposite? Why does it feel helpless? Why does it feel paralyzing? Why do you sometimes spend 2 hours scrolling your phone, bored the entire time, consuming content that satisfies nothing, and then feel worse at the end than when you started? The answer lies in what researchers call the attentional component of boredom.
Eastwood's research found that boredom isn't fundamentally about having nothing to do. It's about being unable to direct your attention toward anything that feels meaningful. Attention is not passive. Your attention is active, hungry, constantly searching for something worth investing in. When no worthy target presents itself, or when you are surrounded by infinite options, but none feel like they truly matter, your brain enters a painful, idle state. Not rest, not sleep, idle. The engine is running, consuming fuel and energy, but no gear has been engaged. That is the sensation you feel when you scroll endlessly without watching anything. It is the feeling of being at a party and still feeling completely alone. It is the low hum behind every Sunday afternoon that seems to last forever. This is why solitary confinement remains one of the most extreme forms of punishment humans have ever devised. Remove all meaningful stimulation from a human mind, and you don't simply produce discomfort or sadness, you produce psychological disintegration. Within days, people placed in isolation begin to hallucinate. Their minds begin manufacturing their own stimulation, voices, shapes, sensations, because a human brain that cannot engage with the world begins to turn inward and devour itself. It will create reality rather than experience nothing. No other animal shows quite this precise profile of collapse in isolation, and the reason is the same reason you feel agitated in a waiting room. Your brain is built to engage, to project forward in time, to imagine, to construct meaning. When it cannot do these things, it does not go quiet. It screams.
There is a study from 2014 that makes this point more viscerally than any description can. Timothy Wilson at the University of Virginia placed participants alone in a room with nothing to do for 15 minutes. No phone, no book, no music, just themselves and their own thoughts. They could, if they chose, press a button that would deliver a mild electric shock, a shock they had already rated as painful, a shock they said they would pay money to avoid. 2/3 of the men in the study and 1/4 of the women chose to shock themselves rather than simply sit with their own minds for a quarter of an hour. They chose physical pain over mental silence. Read that slowly. The human mind, given the choice between mild pain and pure emptiness, will take the pain every single time. But here is the part that most people miss. Boredom, when you don't immediately escape it, when you sit inside it and let it do its work, is one of the most generative, creatively powerful states the human mind can enter. Sandi Mann at the University of Central Lancashire conducted an experiment. She gave participants a deeply boring task, copying phone numbers out of a phone book, line after line, with no purpose and no end. Then she immediately tested their creative output. The bored participants significantly outperformed those who had been doing something engaging before the test. Their creativity scores were higher. Their ability to generate novel ideas, unexpected connections, and original solutions was measurably greater. The theory is elegant. When your attention is no longer locked onto an external task, when you stop forcing your mind to focus and let it drift, a network of brain regions called the default mode network activates. This is the network responsible for imagination, self-reflection, future planning, and the spontaneous creative connections between ideas that rarely surface when you are concentrating on something. Your mind, given nothing to do, does not go blank. It begins to generate. That is what daydreaming is. That wandering is where the best ideas live, the ones that feel like they arrived from nowhere, which is actually the feeling of your brain connecting things you never consciously tried to connect.
The problem in the modern world is that you never let boredom finish its work. You feel the first flicker of it, 2 seconds, maybe 5, and you reach for your phone. You eliminate the discomfort before it can transform into anything useful. You kill the signal before the signal can do what it evolved to do. Every minute of scrolling you use to escape boredom is a minute where your default mode network stays quiet. The connection that was forming, the idea that was almost there, disappears before it arrives. Your ancestors sat with boredom. They had no choice. They sat in firelight after a long day, staring into the dark, and out of that restless, uncomfortable nothing came cave paintings, music, mythology, the first spoken stories, the first questions about why the stars move and what happens when a person stops breathing. Language itself may have been born from boredom, from minds with enough time and nothing urgent to do, turning their attention toward each other, toward sound, toward meaning.
The first tools were refined in boredom. The first journeys were undertaken by bored minds that decided somewhere else must be better. The entire restless project of human civilization was built by people who couldn't stand doing nothing.
You are alive today, partly because your ancestors couldn't stand to sit still, because their brains demanded meaning, demanded engagement, demanded something better than the present moment. And that demand drove them across continents, over mountains, across open ocean, into every climate and environment this planet had to offer. Because boredom, at its root, is the brain refusing to accept that this is all there is. And now you're sitting in a waiting room. The chairs are still uncomfortable, your phone is still full of content that will not satisfy you, but underneath the familiar creeping itch, your brain is doing exactly what it was built to do, scanning, searching, running quietly on 2 million years of restlessness. That feeling is not a flaw in your design. It is the most human thing about you, the most ancient thing about you. It is the signal that you are capable of more than this moment. The question is whether you will sit with it long enough to find out what.